Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Origins of Expressions. Today, we are diving into the intriguing realm of idiomatic expressions. Here we encounter the familiar phrase, robbing Peter to pay Paul. This commonly used idiom paints a vivid picture of financial juggling, where resources are shifted from one source to cover debts elsewhere. It's a metaphorical dance of balance and trade-offs, offering a look into the complications of managing obligations and resources. Join us as we delve into the origins of this timeless phrase, shedding light on its enduring importance in our everyday language. The phrase, robbing Peter to pay Paul, means taking money or resources from one place to pay off a debt somewhere else. It's like shuffling things around, but it can create new problems because you're just moving the issue from one place to another, keeping a cycle of debt or imbalance. It shows how tricky it can be to manage money and handle different financial responsibilities at the same time. So where did the phrase come from? Once upon a time, back in 1450, or possibly even earlier in the medieval era, there was already chatter about the phrase, to rob Peter and give it to Paul. Found in John Wycliffe's selected English works, the passage reads, Lord, how should God approve that you rob Peter and give his rob to Paul in the name of Christ? This is a quaint way of expressing the act of taking from one and giving to another, which was frowned upon as a major ethical no-no. Before it was in writing, it was said to be a common saying, but people were grappling with theological conundrums. This phrase questions the morality or justification of taking from one person, Peter, only to give it to another person, Paul, in the excuse of religious righteousness. It highlights the ethical dilemma of redistributing resources or wealth in a manner that may not be fair or just. This saying was such old news by 1546 that John Haywood was already penning verses about it in his Book of Proverbs, called a dialogue containing the number in effect of all the proverbs in the English tongue. It reads, Rob Peter and pay Paul. Thou sayest I do, but thou robbest and pullst Peter and Paul too. In modern English, this would mean, rob Peter and pay Paul. You say I do it, but in reality, you're robbing both Peter and Paul. This phrase is often used to criticize someone who shifts resources or funds from one place to another, ultimately leaving both parties worse off. It highlights the foolishness of attempting to solve one problem by creating another, similar to the ethical dilemma presented in the original context. It wasn't just the Brits who were in on it. Our friends in France were already talking about uncovering Peter to cover Paul as early as 1611. They had the saying, strip Peter to clothe Paul. But what's the deal with Peter and Paul, you ask? Well, besides the snazzy-sounding rhyming pattern, these two were the dynamic duo of Christianity. They were both apostles and martyrs who even shared a feast day. So, when folks said, rob Peter to pay Paul, they weren't just talking about moving money around. They were making a statement about the silliness of taking from one similar thing just to give to another. It's a bit like borrowing from one church to fund another. Sure, they're both churches, but what's the point? It's a bit like Peter and Paul themselves, two peas in a pod, inseparable and alike in many ways. Regardless of its origins, the meaning of robbing Peter to pay Paul is clear. It's an expression used to describe a situation in which someone takes resources from one source in order to pay off a debt or obligation to another source. This can be done with money, time, or other resources. Here's an example of how the phrase might be used in everyday language. I had to rob Peter to pay Paul in order to make my rent payment this month. As you can see, the phrase is often used to describe financial struggles or difficulties, but it can be applied to other situations as well. So, robbing Peter to pay Paul has been a common idiom that has been in use for hundreds of years. While its origins are uncertain, the phrase is widely used to describe situations in which someone takes resources from one source in order to pay off a debt to another. Whether it has its roots in religious practices or medieval coin clipping, the phrase has become a recognizable expression in the English language. And while we may never know exactly where it came from, we can be sure that people will continue to use it to describe their financial struggles for many years to come. Well, that is the information that I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed learning about the origins of our phrases. If you did, I would love to have you subscribe. It's quick and easy, and I would really appreciate it. Oh yeah, quick question before you go. Do you know any idioms or phrases you would like to learn about? I would love to see them. Leave them in the comments below. Thank you again for watching and subscribing. I really appreciate your support. Until next time, bye for now.